fellow select board member. Chiming in online is our other select board member, Bill Taylor. We have Ellie Kreutz here at the table taking minutes. Our town administrator, Nicole McStay, is with us, along with our finance director, Lily Gilligan. We'll hear from other members of the staff as well. 5 o'clock right now. We'll hear from a proposed EDA subcommittee on affordable housing. We'll possibly vote to approve revised bond refinancing payment schedule. And also discuss the appointment of John Griffin as a Peterborough police officer. We'll possibly appoint Paul LaRoche to the Downtown TIP Advisory Board and the EDA. That's the Economic Development Authority. And then we'll vote to approve minutes from November 2nd, 2021. And then at 6 p.m. we'll have a joint select board and budget committee meeting where the budget committee will join us and we'll start budget season so we can hash out where we are with our finances. We are streaming on Ustream tonight, but if you're watching on channel 22, you're probably not going to be seeing us, so you'll have to check it out online. All right. EDA Affordable Housing Committee, welcome. Who will be speaking for this group?
I guess it's James, since we've come under EDA, right? Or Danica, you were going? Or?
Well, James can start it. I'm here to help if there's any other questions that he feels he can answer.
All right.
Well, again, we've given some information about the committee.
Right.
And you all have a printed copy of that?
Yes.
And so what we're asking for is for the select board to approve the creation of a subcommittee of the EDA following the guidelines that are on this page, showing the organization, mission, and goal of the subcommittee. So we're asking for the select board to give approval to the creation of the subcommittee with these conditions as described in the page. Now, we've had a number of meetings between EDA members, committee members, and right now we only have 3 people who are on this subcommittee of the affordable housing, but we want to add to it to get to 7 members with 2 alternatives. But again, we haven't done that until we've sort of got the official approval of this being an official committee or subcommittee of the EDA. So my request and proposal is approval from the select board to make this a subcommittee of the EDA, which I chair.
All right. Would you mind just reading the mission statement of the proposed committee for the public to hear?
All right, how loud do I have to scream?
Or I can read it?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Yeah, please read it.
Okay. We've been already meeting once a month anyways, but
Sure.
we need to get your approval so that we can be official. And then we can vote on having other members. So, the Affordable Housing Subcommittee of the EDA, established in 2021 by a majority vote of EDA members, to be created for the purpose of coordinating efforts and initiating the development of such housing to enhance the economic resiliency of the community and attract and retain a diverse workforce. Did you want the goals?
Yeah, that would be great, actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
The goals of the committee are to forge and maintain relationships with all large-scale employers and meet with them annually to review housing needs for staff. Number 2, keep an inventory of all housing availability, including rentals and housing which meets the definition of affordable, and report on new affordable housing stock annually. There's a sub-thing. Annual report should report on whether the affordable housing is affordable enough. Does low income, workforce, Section 8, etc. need to be promoted more heavily? The other goal is annually meet and collaborate with regional housing trusts, included but not limited to, the Kentucky Housing Trust to explore opportunities for the community. Members actively identify opportunities for affordable housing and rentals and bring opportunities to the Affordable Housing Subcommittee to act as a catalyst in helping the opportunity move forward. And acting as a catalyst may include, but is not limited to, providing connections to financial resources, opportunity to sit with town planner and code enforcement officer to review the permitting process and information gathering on town sewer and water connections. And that's it.
That sounds pretty great, actually, pretty thorough and a nice set of guidelines to go by. Bill, have you been, as liaison to EDA, have you been?
I've been following this, of course, and
Sure.
I was there at the EDA meeting. I do have a question, though. Is it a requirement that the select board approve a subcommittee assignment?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I support it in any case, so.
Bill Taylor, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Great. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to add or ask any questions? Kate?
Sure, no, this sounds good. Who is on the EDA right now? And what's the appointment or election or selection process for the proposed 7 members and 2 alternates? Do people self-nominate? Is the EDA, do they have to be elected? I mean, what happens about
Explain
all
the
that?
procedure. Because it's a subcommittee of the EDA, there is a volunteer form anyways, you know, you probably have filled out since you are on committees. And it's a request, and it's approved by the EDA chair, the EDA committee, because we're a subcommittee, that you want to participate on the Affordable Housing Committee. And we will be actively seeking members once, you know, this is approved. Right now, we do meet once a month, and it's at 8:30 in the morning, usually.
This is your subcommittee.
Yeah, the subcommittee, yeah.
What about the EDA? Who's in that?
Well,
I'm the
James
chairman
is
of
the
the
chair,
EDA.
yeah. So the
I guess I
chair.
can look up who else is in it.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Oh, okay, the chair,
Well, in about 10 minutes, Paul may be on the ED.
okay, that's right. So the chair has to approve it, and then he submits it to the select boards, and then we're put up there, you know.
But did you want to know who's on the Affordable Housing Committee?
No.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's only 3 people right now, right?
Well, 3 official members
Right.
right now, but
But other
they're
But it wants to
actively
grow to 7,
participating.
and then I'm just curious, I'm just trying to get a picture, like, who else is in the EDA right now?
Right
I don't
now,
really know.
Pelagia Vincent
Yeah.
is the chair. There's James Kelly and myself, and we're the 3 official
Right,
people.
subcommittee.
Okay, but we have active participants that attend: Joanne Carr, Stephanie Hurley, Carol Nelson, Tricia Bell originally was going to be a member, but she has too many things right now. She already, Tricia Bell, and Danica always attends the meetings, so we take our own minutes. But she's our liaison with administration, and because she also, the EDA comes under her. And then, you know, James is our,
Chair of EDA.
yeah.
Yeah.
Does that help, or?
Yeah, I still don't know who's on the EDA, but I'll go look at
Who's
it.
on the EDA?
I'm sorry.
I can name some members.
I
for
can
you.
name them all, but
Oh, yeah, Bill is.
I'll say Bill, his wife Jean is also on it, Andy Peterson, Laura Gingras, Jamie Connolly is,
Gene Deach.
Jean Deach. Megan Swoko is also on it. I think I've hit them all. Okay. Yeah. Sorry,
Thanks.
anyone if I forgot them. But that's the majority.
Yeah, just trying to get a picture.
And the interest in having this finally official is because you will be, the master plan will be dealing with housing upcoming. And it's, so somebody from our committee is actively involved with them as well.
I do realize that there are administrative requirements now that when you become an official subcommittee, you have to post your agenda a week ahead of time, I
It's
believe.
a minimum of 24 hours in advance.
Yeah.
absolute minimum.
And then take minutes and have those posted, and I believe either send them to Gretchen or Ally.
Even with the subcommittee?
Even with the subcommittee, they're
Yeah.
all public bodies, so they all have to follow the 91A open meeting rules.
But they're not a quorum of the EDA.
Doesn't matter, because if they're to have any kind of official activity, they have to follow the same open meeting laws.
And Danica, so we do it through Danica now already.
Yep.
However.
I'm just saying, but, right, we haven't been
I just
able
wanted-
to have our minutes posted until we're recognized.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that burden.
Yeah. Oh,
I knew you did. I wanted to make it clear to the public as well.
Okay, yeah.
Kate?
And just one more comment, I think the goals are great. You know, there's some of the things that I've been thinking, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. So I'm very happy to see them written down here as
Yeah.
actionable goals that a group can now take on and do. It's great.
I agree with that, yes, sir.
Have we gotten a definition of affordable housing yet in Peterborough, or is that still something
Yeah,
to
that's
work
right.
on?
Actually, there is a legal definition, yeah,
So what
in
do
the
you call it, the
RSA's.
legal
There's a
definition?
statutory definition, and it basically comes under workforce housing. It's a workforce housing
But
statute.
as far as a number, an actual number, is that a percentage of something in Peterborough, or?
Yeah, it's by county, yeah, and it's published, and it has to do, which is an important piece of it, because that's how people can get funding or grants and all that, is if they propose, you know, things, so.
Very good. Any other questions?
Make a motion?
If you'd like.
I make the motion that we approve the formation of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I don't think so. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We have an aye on the interweb.
You do have, okay, I
I
was,
couldn't hear that one.
you can't hear them.
Yeah.
Oh, there
Nobody
it is.
really knows I'm here until I say something.
So it's unanimous. Great, excellent.
Thank you.
Off.
Well, thank you.
You have work to do, you better go right now.
Yeah, I do.
No, thank you, thank you for getting this going.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
encouraging. I didn't really mean you had to.
Didn't have to ask this.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, so we have revised bond refinancing payment schedule. Lily, would you like to briefly bring us up to speed on that?
Sure. In the process of closing out the audit and setting tax rate, a grant that I was unaware of when we were refinancing the bonds and making decisions has been in place and will continue to be an annual received grant from the
New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So the total amount left to receive from this grant is over $3.4 million. And the grant must be used to pay the bond at the wastewater treatment plant. And that was one of the bonds that we are refinancing. And the decision that was made when we voted for the refinancing was to take the savings up front and not pay the USDA wastewater treatment plant bond this year. Well, in order to be in compliance with the grant and continue to receive these funds, we need to pay this bond this year, just like every other year. So the other option that you were presented with was take the savings over 17 years as opposed to all the upfront savings. The total savings would be $478,486 over what you voted, so over what you're paying right now. What you voted for previously was to save $445,350, so you'll actually be saving an additional $33,135 in this refinancing, and this very important $3.4 million grant will be left intact and not be in jeopardy based on the payment schedule.
Gotcha, so we still have to span it over the 17 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We couldn't get around it. Right.
So,
It'll be here in no time,
So,
17
the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank was very gracious in recalculating and making this change at the last moment, at about the 11th hour. The deadline for any changes is tomorrow morning. So, they're looking for a vote from you to select option 1, which saves you $478,486 over the lifetime of those 3 bonds, 2 water and 1 wastewater, that you are refinancing.
All right. Any questions, Bill?
But we don't have an option, really, do we?
We could jeopardize a
You could
$3 million
jeopardize-
grant.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea.
We don't need that.
And this money, additionally, I should say, this money was budgeted to be spent this year in your operating budget for sewer enterprise fund. So the money is there, and in order to make this payment.
No effect whatsoever on taxes.
I'm sorry, say that louder?
No effect whatsoever on taxes.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you. Bill Taylor, any questions over there?
No, I'm just glad that got caught.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve option 1
I'll second
as
that.
stated.
I'll second that.
And we have a second. Any discussion from the audience? Any questions or, sorry, I didn't ask? It looks like all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright,
And an aye from Bill Taylor as well. Great. Unanimous.
you.
Thank you for catching that. And
Yeah, thank you very much for catching that. That's really
Thank you very much for the reconsideration.
saved.
Yeah, well, that's great. All right, up next is Officer, well, is he an officer yet?
Well, he is an
John
officer,
Griffin?
yes.
Okay. Is John Griffin here? Officer
He is
Griffin?
not, he's still working for, he's finishing out his prior employment, and then he'll be starting with us very soon.
Okay, you met Officer Griffin? and-
I have not met Officer Griffin yet, but he comes highly recommended from Antrim, and Chief Kennard is thrilled to be bringing him on board.
All right. Sounded like Bill, you were going to add something?
yeah, his name's Giffin, not Griffin.
Yeah.
There's no R.
You're right. My apologies to Officer Giffin. Thank you for catching that. Excellent.
I know him because I went to high school with him.
Oh, great. All right then. Do we have a motion to appoint Officer Giffin?
Let Bill
So
know.
moved.
All right, I'll second that, having not met Mr. Giffin, but going on the recommendation of Chief Kennard and Bill Taylor. And, well, anybody have any questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Alright,
All right, welcome to Peterborough, Officer Giffin.
When is his start date coming out?
Believe it's next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How does that bring our police department as far as staff?
We should be
Up
full,
to-
we should be
full
fully
now?
staffed at that point. We may be still down a part-time. I'm not sure, I'd have to go and take a look, but I think we're just about fully staffed. so,
Okay.
Which is great.
Good.
It's
And so Chief Kennard's been working to get that,
always,
working hard to get that.
always.
All right. Okay, LaRoche is here. Welcome. Up for 2 appointments. Would you like to introduce yourself and?
Sure.
say hi?
I'm Paul LaRoche. I'm a builder and developer in town. I've been in town, I've lived in Peterborough my entire life. Just kind of looking to get more involved in what's going on in the town and have some more involvement in the town government and trying to kind of put my hat in the ring to help out a little bit. So I've got 20 years of experience in development and housing, and I think I have a good background for kind of helping with some of the issues that are going on in town right now. So.
Nice.
Boy, we'll second that motion. I met Paul through my wife. Paul and I were actually originally talking about him going on to the Greater Downtown TIF Advisory. And I recommended that he actually join the EDA and become the chairman of the Greater Downtown TIF Advisory. Because there's a deed for it. And I know that Cy Gregg has been masterful over the years, but he's getting kind of tired of it, I think. So it's great that you can step in. I'm very impressed with your background, so it would be a great asset to the EDA, there's no question about it.
You said second, but that sounded like a motion.
I seconded his motion.
Oh. Great, well, I'll second your motion.
Okay.
Bill, anything to add? Taylor?
No, I mean, I know Paul pretty well myself, and I think it's great, first of all, that he's getting involved, and thanks, Paul. And he comes from a long line of LaRoches in the business.
Yeah. Welcome, Paul. So all those in favor of appointing Paul?
Well, we're going to appoint Paul to both committees at this point, is that fine?
I think that was your motion. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
The motion is, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Welcome, thank you for volunteering, Paul. Again, you've probably heard this before, but the town has really gotten far on volunteer help. And there are a lot of people that dedicate a lot of their time to make it run as well as it does. And so thank you for joining us. And see you around. Thanks for coming tonight.
So the next meeting of the GD TIF is what, next week, right?
Oh, no.
Oh, no, end of the month.
Yes, Friday, January 28th at 7 a.m.
Is there, yeah, I was,
We'll have
she's trying to
coffee.
kill me.
I know.
She's trying to kill me. Is there an EDA meeting in the interim?
There is. Let me look at that. It's the same Monday, the 24th at 11 a.m. Both are located in this room. I can send you a note as a reminder for
Yeah,
both.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
So you'll be introduced to the EDA first and then move on to the GD TIF. Okay. Perfect.
And you're prepared, you already know a little bit about the new housing subcommittee.
Yeah, I think that you might want to hear a lot more about that.
Yeah.
We already said it.
Absolutely.
Well, Danica's a great resource, but I also am liaison to both of those committees, so if you have any questions or anything, just, I'll try to answer them. Good. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Excellent. Has anyone read the meeting minutes from November 2nd? It was our last meeting of the year, wasn't it?
I think you had one more after that? but-
Yes, and that was approved at the last meeting. So they were out of order. So this was the second to last meeting.
Well, this one was more memorable than apparently.
I felt it was old news, but anyway.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes from November 2nd. Thank you, Ally.
And I'll second that.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 An aye from Bill.
Aye from the internet.
And I'd like to commend Ally for taking such great notes.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you very
always.
much.
Always.
Yeah, very helpful. Great. Is there any new business? Anything to add?
We certainly do have something new to add. So in other business, we've had discussion recently over the last few weeks with Monadnock Community Hospital, who I think everyone knows is in a tough spot right now with the COVID, as every other hospital in Hampshire is right now. So to speak a little bit more to that, Chief Walker's here.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
I'll let you pick it up. You can, I'll let you.
Somehow I don't think that was a, sure, if you'd like to join me, you can. Thank you, Nicole.
Welcome, thank you, Chief.
So, I remember sitting in this room on Sunday, March 15th, 2020, with the then Select Board, then Town Administrator and Deputy Town Administrator talking about this new thing called COVID, after we'd had a Friday the 13th presidential and gubernatorial declarations around that. And here we are, almost 2 years later. We've gone through, as you know, we've gone through various waves and so forth, and now there continues, despite the fact we're almost 2 years into this, a lot of uncertainty with it. The one thing we do know is locally our infection rates are up, our numbers are up, positivity is up. We as a town have discussed and realized that it is not feasible for us to have a true mask mandate, similar to some of the cities and towns, Keene and Lebanon are two that come to mind, that have been able to enforce, to enact and then enforce mask mandates. That being said, however, it doesn't mean that it isn't important for us as a community by community, I mean select board, administration, and myself as the EMS and health officer, to realize that we should be doing everything we can to encourage our residents to, not only be safe, but also be proactive for their health and the health of others. So what we are proposing to look at is a two-pronged approach. The first thing here is a proclamation by the board. As Nicole mentioned in the beginning, Monadnock Community Hospital has worked really closely with us. Anybody who came into town this afternoon, 101 or 202, notice we have new banners up. New banners encouraging folks to stay masked and get vaccinated. We also have been hearing that, like I said, Monadnock, and Nicole mentioned Monadnock, along with other hospitals in the state, are really struggling now with admissions, not just COVID, but also other admissions. And the number of available beds, and the fact that a lot of folks are getting very sick with this. So what we have proposed is a proclamation by the select board, and we have it up here for you, and I think you folks have it in front of you. A proclamation that really would emphasize to our residents, our employees in town, and our visitors in town the need to not only stay vigilant, but also to be masked and to get vaccinated and follow other guidelines as presented both by the federally through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as our New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. So we're looking tonight to, and this is a draft language, to have a discussion with the board about the board providing this proclamation, and then in addition to that is another discussion around the requirement for masks in public buildings. So in government buildings, so anybody in a public building in Peterborough with some caveats would be masked. So those are sort of two separate things. So I guess
Town of Peterborough.
Town of Peterborough building, so town-owned buildings. So fire station, police station, recreation office, library, townhouse, and so forth.
Chief, would this include town employees that serve the public outside of, like, fire rescue that go out in an ambulance?
So we already are required, so as EMS providers, there's actually a protocol that requires us to have masks. It has been in place since the beginning. We are actually required to have eye protection as well as respiratory protection, so an N95 depending on the severity of the patient you're dealing with. So we're already there. We have department policies. I know Chief Kennard has a policy for the police department again in dealing with that, and I believe just about every other department does have for their various, I know, for example, water utilities folks when in homes are asked have been wearing masks. So we have those. That it isn't specifically addressed in tonight's draft, but I know that there are existing policies, and we can certainly highlight that tomorrow as department directors too, folks.
And that leads to my next question. Were department heads and other employees or people that work in these locations notified of this, or has this been discussed with them?
No, not most recently, it's not been discussed. I mean, other than tangentially, we talked a little bit about, for instance, library. There had been a recent conversation about their staff, always being masked up when they're, but particularly when they're interacting with the public. But they've made it more or less universal at the library to wear masks. There's been conversation over the last year or so. Anytime any member of the town of Peterborough staff is interacting with a member of the public, that they wear a mask or be behind protection, unless the person, requests that you don't. There have been occasions, particularly with regards to police vehicle stops, where they ask the officer to take off their mask so that they can see their expression more easily. So it's situation dependent, of course. At this point, we do not require them, like for instance, in my office, I don't necessarily require someone who's coming into my office to wear a mask. If they ask for me to wear a mask, I'll put one on. I'll ask them as they're coming in, would you like, mask on or mask off, whatever your comfort level is. But because mine's not, an office that's open to the public, it hasn't been mandated. So it really depends on the situation.
So if we were to vote on this, mask wearing in all town buildings, that would then now include your office?
No, it does, there's an exemption listed in that.
Okay, that was in this.
Did you
Yeah.
get this?
I had.
I do have that. I do have that here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we jumped around, I'm sorry.
So we have two things that we're considering, I
things.
think, in this.
Yep.
The first one is the proclamation, essentially, which is a sort of a general proclamation that we support, masks and other healthy behaviors, including social distancing.
Social distancing, masking, vaccination,
Washing
and following all other guidance is appropriate and may change.
Okay, so what about town clerk's office? I know we had an issue and we had quite a hostile issue at the mid area of our COVID timeframe, the town clerk's office, and people are concerned about that office. What do we know about what's going on over there?
So we do have plexiglass up in the office now. Most people that come into the town clerk's office are wearing a mask already. There are some people who do not, for whatever their personal reason is, whether it's medical or political or what have you, choose not to wear a mask. There are, of course, opportunities available, so if you were to require a mask, you still could not require it of anyone who has a health issue. A person who's on oxygen, for instance, or a person who has some other kind of limitation that would prevent them from wearing a mask. You do not have the power to require that those people produce documentation that proves that, so you really do have to take people at their word, of course. And if someone refuses to wear a mask and therefore won't come into the building, for whatever their personal reason, they do have the option, of course, doing their business online, via mail, what have you. So we would certainly be emphasizing that a bit more strongly.
And now last year, Secretary of State got involved and was very clear that the select board has no purview over the town clerk's operations, but we do have it over the building.
Correct.
Is the town clerk on board with this? And will they be a team player and go along with this?
We haven't discussed that yet.
I think that's something that needs to be discussed.
In a sense, they're exempted as long as they stay back in the private office, because there is a
There's
partition.
no direct contact.
But there
No
is
direct contact.
but there is a sense of must wear a mask. Will there be enforcement over there?
That is going to be up to every department director. I simply cannot police everyone. We can't have an officer here to police it. Chief Walker can't be here to police his health officer. We're going to have to leave it at the discretion of the directors to make sure that they
So
are.
why are we bothering with lip service saying must wear a mask?
I think we need to make a public statement.
That people are going to disregard?
Well, but
Well,
let's take a half step back here. I mean, the exemption listed and I'll thank Bill Kennedy for drawing this up. Exemptions include private offices and private meetings. When you're one-on-one with the town clerk, one-on-one with the treasurer collector, one-on-one with the town administrator, the fire chief, you're in a private office.
I don't believe that.
It's a public
This is a public building and it shouldn't be a private meeting
Yeah.
with the town clerk.
It's not, I got to
Is it?
correct you there.
Okay.
That's any
All right.
time, any space that is regularly open to the public, so including that lobby area in the town clerk's office is considered a public space.
I'm just concerned that we don't get in the same situation we did last year, which brought about lawsuits and we all know about it.
Yeah.
It's been well documented in the paper, so. Do you have anything to say, Bill Taylor? Questions?
I think at this point in this pandemic, which is like now phase 2, gigantic, anything that we can do is good move at this point.
I can't emphasize the urgency of this, particularly with respect to our hospital. Chief Walker was enumerating the many ways in which this has really thrown a monkey wrench into the health of the community. And in particular, for those who are seeking emergency services. Our Monadnock Community Hospital doesn't have any free beds, right? Aren't they full up?
No hospitals have free
No,
beds.
I mean, you've been driving to Vermont. So, whatever we can do in order to ameliorate this situation, the United States had over 1 million new cases of COVID on Monday. Nearly 800,000, 900,000 people have died. You know, it's just, it's crazy. And I really feel strongly that the town needs to come out strongly, and make a statement to the public that we're doing the best we can, we're doing the most that we can. And this is one of the ways we can do it. We're in charge of this building, essentially. And I think a mass mandate, or it's not a mandate, we're calling it a requirement, and I think that's appropriate.
Fair enough. So Nicole, this is going to be on you to get all department heads and town clerk on board with this as team players and as advocates for what Bill just eloquently stated.
I think that it's certainly doable. Again, the select board has the responsibility, has the power over how business is conducted within the buildings. So I think that this is something that is certainly in line that you're able to do if you choose to do so.
All right, do we have to read that proclamation?
Well, so there's two separate pieces.
Yes.
There is the
Yes.
proposed masking requirement in town buildings, and there's the proclamation. So we'll treat them separately. I don't know which one you'd like to address first,
Well, this one's up.
so I can read it out if you like.
That would be great, so anybody listening and not watching can hear it.
So, notice, medical emergency requirement in effect until February 1st, 2022. By order of the Board of Selectmen for the town of Peterborough, New Hampshire. To enter and conduct business in this public building, you must wear a mask over your nose and mouth regardless of COVID-19 vaccination status. This requirement is made at the urgent request by the Monadnock Community Hospital with guidance from the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Exemptions include private offices and private meetings, events for which the insured organizer takes the responsibility for health and well-being of attendees, or for valid medical reasons given by a doctor or other medical professional. So this would be, as I understand it, this would be revisited by the select board on a month-by-month basis, and then either voted to continue or allowed to lapse as is deemed warranted. This would have the effect of requiring masks of all persons entering into public spaces in town of Peterborough-owned buildings. This does not make it a requirement for outdoor spaces, not parks or anything like that, no other government buildings which are not under your purview. Okay?
Great. Do we have a motion to approve that? You drafted it, so I think either comments or questions?
I'll make a motion.
Hold on, Bill,
Yeah.
sorry, Rick, that's a good, let's hear, I didn't ask any questions of the audience. Rick, you have a question?
I just have one comment, I have one question, two comments. The question is, why can Antrim mandate and Keene can mandate, but we can't? Just curious why the difference there?
Sure. Town of Peterborough does not have the emergency powers granted by the city form of government or by towns who have adopted a town charter which extend greater emergency powers to the Board of Selectmen or the town council, as the case may be.
And then my comment is, I agree that the language should be used strong, even though it's not enforceable. I think it's really important to have that strong language, so hopefully, Tyler, to your point, not everybody can, they decide not to follow it, but hopefully there are a lot of people in the middle that'll appreciate that strong language and appreciate the importance. And my other comment was maybe, or a suggestion, maybe make it till March 1st, 2022, and you can always, obviously, in the interim, if things die down again and things are under control, you can let it lapse, but maybe that's just going to give you, not have to worry about it. If you do approve it tonight, that gives you, almost 7 weeks of control before addressing it again.
You don't think COVID will be gone by the end of the month?
Hopefully, March 1st, it'll be springtime by March 1st, and that'll let it die down. But that's just a suggestion.
We have to meet every week anyway, so it's not like we're going anywhere. I don't see a problem with leaving it the way it is. I appreciate the idea and lessening our load, but we're going to be here every week anyways.
That's a good point. Carol?
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'm
Rick.
sorry, I didn't catch this gentleman's name.
That's Rick.
Rick,
Rick Lesser, sorry.
Hi.
sorry, Carol Nelson. So you're saying that this only applies to people that are entering? This is not the one for the employees, or it is?
This would be for the employees so long as they're not in their private offices. So like, for instance, my office is not typically open to the public except, when I have an appointment or a meeting with someone. So it would apply, essentially it would apply to me if I was in the lobby or in this room, but not if I'm in my office.
Okay. I guess I just read it as this I read this is the public, but to enter and conduct business really sounds like you're aiming it towards the public, not really the employees.
As you're talking with the town departmental managers, you might want to mention that as people traverse spaces, for instance, walking through the lobby to your office and so on and so forth, it'd be really great if they were modeling the behavior that we expect of our public. So, mask up while you do that.
I agree.
Appreciate that.
I think they do already.
No.
Not
Well,
entirely.
No.
we sometimes forget.
Yeah.
Well, things have really changed last 2 weeks, so obviously we're in a very different situation now than we were.
Right.
We were all doing the dance, we got
Right.
boosted and we were ready to go. Yeah.
Yes, again.
Anything else? Thanks, Carol. Anything else, anybody? All right, now we did have a motion started from Bill Taylor on this one. Want to finish that? Hello?
Yep, no, I mean, I
Oh.
made the motion that we accept that.
All right, and I will second that for sure, and I appreciate that we're moving in this direction right now. And serious about getting everybody on board, so. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous, thank you, thank you, Chief.
And this is a draft copy, so we need probably to do a little magic with it, so it's readable and that kind of fun stuff, so, but.
Well, I mean, we'll modify it to make it applicable for various buildings and what have you. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. One other piece, of course, is the proclamation that we've kind of started with, and if you like, I can read through this one too, so everyone can hear it.
Please do.
Okay. Whereas COVID-19 has been determined to be a virulent infectious disease threatening the public health and welfare of the country and including residents in the town of Peterborough, and whereas infectious diseases such as COVID-19 are caused by germs such as viruses, bacteria, and parasites, and whereas some diseases, including COVID-19, are transmitted from person to person very easily through respiratory droplets produced by sneezing and talking, and whereas public health officials have determined that it is possible for an infected individual to transmit certain diseases without exhibiting any symptoms, and whereas the best means of slowing the spread of a virus is through minimizing close personal contact with individuals in a public environment, social distancing, covering the mouth and nose by wearing a proper face mask, face covering in a proper manner, proper hand washing and vaccination, and whereas the Select Board for the Town of Peterborough desires to minimize the threat to public health posed by the spread of communicable disease such as COVID-19 within the community. Be it so resolved, the Select Board, on behalf of all the citizens of the Town of Peterborough and all others who work in or visit our community, urge all residents, employees, visitors to our businesses, restaurants, and other establishments to wear face coverings and practice social distancing. Urge all residents, employees, and visitors to our businesses, restaurants, and other establishments to receive the COVID-19 vaccine and any recommended booster shots. Urge all residents, employees, and visitors to our businesses, restaurants, and other establishments monitor themselves for signs or symptoms of COVID-19. And urge all residents, employees, and visitors to our businesses, restaurants, and other establishments follow current Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services guidance to minimize the spread of COVID-19.
That's pretty thorough.
Thank you, Chief Walker, for providing this document for us.
Yeah. Would have liked to have seen that 2 years ago, really.
Sorry it didn't occur to anybody.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, we were lucky that first time around too, I guess. Carol, you had a question?
Yes, how will this be communicated to the public and business owners and visitors?
Great question.
Yeah. Press release, social media, those will be the biggest reach. Of course, we'll have our newsletter that goes out weekly. We'll include it. We'll probably do a special newsletter this week just to make sure it gets out. And then just, again, we've got the signs at the gateways that were provided by...
Still waiting for the two smaller ones for 123 at the Sharon line and 136 at the Greenfield line, but four of the 2101 and the 2202 ones are up.
Yeah.
For all the people that may miss all that, is it possible to drop a copy of this off at every business? Sorry.
I'm sure it's possible. I think that would be up to, you know, if we could get some volunteers that'd be willing to do that.
And if you look at the new banners that are up, they have actually a pretty nice logo on vaccination and masking. And one of the things we discussed with a member of the EDA was potentially the same group where we had the clings produced before that gave the guidance, is working to get those same logos out again, looking at a consistency of messaging. So if we move forward with that, then the proclamation could be included with that, you know, a document that has that proclamation can be included.
Great.
Laura Gingras has mentioned that she's going to provide 50
Okay.
copies of that. And it was coordinated through the EDA to do that distribution. I didn't know if you knew that, Danica, but maybe another program if you want to.
Talk about it at our next meeting.
Good.
Okay, yes. Good. Paul's going to do it.
Welcome aboard.
He's still here. He hasn't left.
All right, well, I would make a motion to approve that proclamation as stated.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Bill, anything to add?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And another from Bill Taylor. Thank you.
We'll have a copy for you to sign in the office
Great.
tomorrow.
All right, and most importantly, just please stay healthy, stay safe. Yes, Rick?
Just kind of a tangential question. What's the town policy if somebody working for the town gets COVID? As far as if they're positive, quarantining, 5 days, 10 days, is there any stated policy per se right now?
We follow New Hampshire Department of Health guidelines and CDC guidelines, which are, of course, a moving target right now. And it really depends. The town of Peterborough as an organization is really like many different companies, kind of all under the same umbrella. So depending on who that person, you know, what department that person's employed by, we have slightly different protocol, you know, and it's very much a case-by-case basis.
All right, I do believe that brings our select board meeting to a close, unless there's any more new business. And at 6 p.m., we will have a joint select board and budget committee meeting discussing the capital improvements plan, draft budget, and townwide impacts. We'll hear from departments, administration, finance, human resources, human services, and miscellaneous budgets. So do stick around, keep watching if you're watching. And a reminder, anybody can always email selectboard@peterborough.nh.gov or town administrator at administration@peterborough.nh.gov. If you ever have any questions on any of these items, you'll get a very thorough answer. All right, motion to adjourn the beginning of the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll be back at 6. Thank you.
Thank you for putting this together. by the way. That's great. Great.
Yeah.
Lily has requested us to go.
It's not inside my mask.
I know.
Oh, yeah, just,
I said the wrong word.
we have we have our task force meetings this year.
That's fine.
So, task force meeting on this Thursday to review some design plans from architects or how they fit on the site.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm kind of sure that keeping this on. If you start getting emails or something.
Right.
Okay, no,
I do that on Zoom.
Good question.
So it's just a
signal? Sam's aware of it.
My dad was my mom. I didn't realize it was you, Carol.
So they have to turn on. Broadcast privileges like that.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. I'll reopen the meeting and hand it over to Carl Mabzina, Chair of the Budget Committee, to introduce everybody.
thank you, Tyler. First thing I'm going to do is turn off the sound of my phone. Regard that as a hint if you like. So we have sitting at the table here from the Budget Committee, starting on my far right here is Don Parkhurst. Beside him is Rich Clark. Beside him is Jim Long. I'm Carl Mabzino. This is Rich Lesser. That's Al Leno's next to him, and Ronnie McIntyre there. Seated in the peanut gallery, we have on the corner over here Andy Sliver, and next to her is Bob Lambert. That's the Budget Committee, and we're all here today. I think we turn it at this point over to you, Nicole. Is that right?
Yep. All right, just real quick before we jump in, for anyone who is watching us on stream and unfortunately not on Comcast right now, since that seems to be off air, you can find copies of our draft budget available on our website, which is www.peterborough.nh.gov. Keep in mind that this is a draft budget right now, and it's going to be updated pretty frequently as we go through the next 6 weeks. So by all means, check back frequently. Tonight's presentations, we have the capital improvement plan. That'll be presented to us by Valerie Jenkins, right behind me. Then we have the draft budget and townwide impacts. That's going to be myself with Lily. And then I'll be presenting the administration budgets, which include administration, of course, legal fees, human services, welfare, depending on how you prefer to call it, assessing, and patriotic purposes. And then Lily will be presenting finance, which includes finance, of course, general government, human resources, tax collection, and debt service. Now I'm going to pass this over to Valerie.
Thank you.
Big button right there.
Okay. May I stand so that I can see? Thank you. Okay. My name is Valerie Jenkins. I am the Vice Chair of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. And I'm my neighbor, Alan.
And also her chauffeur.
Yeah. And you threw me off my hands.
You're doing so well.
I know, I was doing so well. We have a series of slides here for you presenting the major components of what this committee discussed. These are the members of the committee who considered the capital improvement plan for fiscal 2023. Rather than just read do I need to read everything? Are there people that are just listening and can't see?
Presumably everyone has the visual, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if people who are watching are visually impaired or not.
Okay. All right. Well, at least so that you will know who the members are. It is Robert Hanson, who is the chairman, and I believe he's in Florida. Lucky him. I am Valerie Jenkins. Lindsay Dreyer is from the planning board representative. Carl Mabzino, you already met. He's also the chair of the budget committee. Leandra McDonald, James Kelly, Alan Zeller, and Ed Yanks. This gives you an idea of what the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, or CIP, looks at each year in order to present their recommendations to the Budget Committee. We look at large dollar expenses, extended useful life of facilities or equipment, infrequent recurrence of expenditures, bonded debt that's needed for financing, real property acquisition, expansion of utility systems, and creation or expansion of a public building. As part of the process, we hear from all the department heads. Excuse my back. And we consider the schedule of how projects are to be accomplished and how they are best financed. Now there are going to be several slides that present the requests of the department heads. This first one is from the Information Technology and GIS Department, and it contains what they normally will request every year as replacements for things that are approaching end of life or need repair. And there is also a deposit made into the GIS capital reserve each year in order to build up a balance, and then once every few years they update the GIS maps. This allows them to come before the committee with some money already in place. This year we heard from the assessing department with their need for a new piece of software. This is the first slide for Department of Public Works. And it shows their needs, which again this year seem to be fairly repetitive. I haven't been here that long, but I've done this for 3 years, and these things come up regularly, again, so that you're not hit with something that's huge. And you can see that there are some offsets here from on the second line, from a block grant, from the downtown TIF, and from a highway vehicle capital reserve fund. Second slide for the Department of Public Works. And there is a small correction here for the Cheney lift station. The method of financing should actually say user fees. And that will affect the last two slides just a little bit. One bar will be a little bit higher and one bar will be a little bit lower because of that small error that's there. Again, there are offsets that will help pay for what is listed on this slide.
Ask a question.
You certainly can.
What's a lift station?
Oh, where is Seth?
It's literally a pumping station to pump up. Cheney Lift Station services the 9 homes for wastewater on Cheney. Yep.
Just moving forward, would you prefer that if we have questions, we save them till the end of your presentation, or if we wish to ask a question, should we raise our hand and interrupt you? What?
I don't care either way. You can jump right in if you'd like. Now, there's another question.
When, I assume you spoke with Scott Bradford about the glass crusher, when he presented this for the proposal. What happens with our glass? It doesn't really get recycled, or it just gets crushed and thrown out in the back 40, or where is it going?
It's used for fill, for road bed and other purposes where it gets buried basically, but we use it in lieu of buying material.
Yeah, we reuse it. We've been accumulating it for many years now, in the hopes to be able to use it as fill material when we close out the wastewater treatment lagoons that remain down at the old treatment lagoons.
So we're not recycling glass ever?
No, we're holding on to it. It's valuable to us.
All right.
That's been the practice for several years now.
Yes.
Well, and not recently, but up until several years ago.
One question I have, or suggestion, as we go through this, if we encounter an item that is going to be on as part of a warrant article, could we indicate that, just so we'll be aware of that?
Sure, would you like me to go back to the beginning? I may need a little help here because I'm not sure which are warrant articles and which,
I think IT
certainly
desk
reserve
ops.
funds.
That'll be part of the Article 3, the regular budget.
And on that first page too is the GIS Capital Reserve Fund. That is a special warrant article.
That gets included in all of those, that combined warrant article for adding to capital reserve fund, previously expended. And then the assessing database is also included in the budget, and I'll be talking about that briefly tonight.
When you say included in the budget, is that, do you mean by that it is going to be a warrant article or it is not?
It is in the budget.
Okay.
Budget, Article 3, yep.
Okay.
And the roadway systems,
So roadway systems is a combination. The portion of it that is supported, the first entry there that you see that is supported by NHDOT block grant and whatnot, that is by taxation. And also, in part by taxation, in part by the fees collected by the town clerk during vehicle registration. All that goes into making up that $450,000. And then the roadway system upgrades capital reserve fund, that's a separate warrant article that we vote on at town meeting.
and then also the highway vehicle, that would be...
That's actually money that's already been raised and appropriated and has been parked in a capital reserve fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's a question in the back?
The recycling question that I think somebody had a question. Can you go to the recycling slide?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what a trailer cold storage is.
It's basically a shed. It's just a shed to store materials in. So we've got trailers set up right now. They're literally, so if you think about 18-wheeler, they've got the big boxes on the back that we've been using those for storage, and they're rusting away because they're more or less unprotected from the
So
weather.
should there be a building instead of trailers?
So it'll be cold storage to go, to cover those up. Trailers are useful because that's what the recycling gets all the way in.
Got it.
I can answer that question. Basically, Scott Bradford approached me to bid something for this. Basically, it's going to be cargo containers, and they're going to build a roof over the top of it.
Yep.
So it's basically a huge shed, but it's an inexpensive way to do it, instead of building a building.
So this is not more trailers, it's a building over the trailers?
The shed.
Or a shed?
Yes.
Over the trailers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there more questions? Yes.
I just had a question on the roadway maintenance program. I assume that that's the same $450,000 that we have been, it's part of that 10-year, I think it was, program.
No, the 10-year program is the roadway systems upgrade capital reserve fund, CRF, the one right below. That's the $400,000. So that's the 10-year plan to do and of course Seth is going to get into a great deal of detail about this.
Okay.
But that's the money that we use for the big improvements, the reclamations, basically rebuilding roads. The roadway maintenance program is what we do to maintain those roads after they have been restored.
Okay, thank you.
That's
I was
our
confusing
ongoing
them.
work. Yeah, it is a little confusing, but that's the difference between the two. So one's maintenance and one's the big upgrades.
Okay. Could I add one thing before we continue while we're talking about that? The roadway maintenance is in the highway budget. In the master budget here. But the source of financing where it says downtown TIF, that is not accurate. That should just be removed.
Oh, I bet that goes...
It does not go anywhere.
It doesn't go under the
No.
sidewalks?
No. Not
Some of the money in the past for sidewalks has been out of downtown TIF. I think we're done with the downtown TIF portion of the sidewalk work, though, unless there's something associated with the Main Street Bridge.
Yeah, it might have been a holdover.
Yeah,
It might have been a holdover.
Seth had,
Yeah.
we had questioned it on Thursday, and Seth responded to that.
It's a holdover.
Just a
Yeah.
general question. Will all of these, most of these items we'll see also in the budget when we do specific departments?
Yes.
Will there be some things in here that we would not see in the budget per se?
You're not going to see anything that's a separate warrant article
Okay, so
in the
we're gonna
budget.
highlight as we go along.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more? Okay, let me go on. Recreation Department. Here again, this is something that the Recreation Department has asked for, resurfacing of the basketball courts and the pool filter. I should have said this sooner. We're under method of financing where it says taxation. That's generally revenue other than offsets. Taxation is a form of revenue, but there may be fees associated, especially in this department. There are some fees for some of these things that it's not direct taxation, it's revenue in general that is not an offset from somewhere else. There is an offset on here from the Isabella Miller Fund for renovating the gym. Question? Police Department, this is normal cruiser replacement. There is a capital reserve fund that is built up and used periodically to buy cruisers. So that $18,100, that would be one of those things, I believe, that is a separate article.
Yes.
What,
Sure.
what is fleet management itself?
The management of the department's fleet of rolling stock.
It's not the maintenance of it, it is the management of it.
Yes.
If I understand.
Yes. If you're talking about things like, regular work on the cruisers, I believe that that's part of the budget. It's not a capital item. Yes.
Next question?
Sure.
So with respect to any of these expenditures that we're seeing here, can we provide some detail with regards to what or to what degree we're putting all these out to bid?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Can you tell, Nicole?
Yeah, it depends, it really depends on the cost and the value. Anything that is over $10,000 is typically put out to bid.
Okay.
That's
As we
further-
did look at, for example, I'm seeing almost 26,000 to paint pencils.
Goes out to bid.
Out to bid.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. Cruisers as well.
Nicole,
Yes, Bill?
do you want to explain that the 18,100 fleet management capital reserve is money that we put away every year to buy cruisers?
Yes, Valerie
And
touched on.
This year, 38,000 of that is getting spent, and we're adding 18,100.
Precisely, Valerie did touch on that, but yeah, that's absolutely accurate. This is basically the half cost every year is what we're saving towards replacement of a cruiser. So it goes into the capital reserve fund. We replace the cruisers as they do gain miles and vehicle hours, run just, idle hours very quickly. And so we try to replace them to make sure that all our cruisers are always in good working order. And they do have quite a bit of value. When we go to sell them, we also put those out publicly. And usually get a pretty good price for them considering the amount of wear and tear that they've accumulated.
And the threshold for replacing those?
It's basically on a calendar basis, with few exceptions. The unmarked vehicle has a much longer lifespan because it doesn't get driven nearly as much as the regular cruisers.
So I believe my understanding is about 100,000 miles.
More or less, yeah, that's about it, yeah.
Seems kind of low.
They run a lot, so it's not just miles, it's engine hours that you're really looking at,
Sure.
and the engines get a big workout.
So we don't look at, from a statistical perspective, increase in maintenance costs that are going into that vehicle, which might suggest it's need for replacement. We just have flat.
We certainly look at that too, and we've unfortunately, we've had some vehicles fairly recently that have very high maintenance costs because unfortunately they were lemons. And so that's been an issue. But Chief Kennard will be able to speak to that in much more detail when he presents his budget.
Yeah, because I've seen we incurred expenses on other equipment, for example, plow trucks and so forth, where they're not very old, don't have a lot of mileage, but yet we're seeking brand new vehicles. I've seen this in the past. I'm interested in what our thresholds are as far as incurring these costs.
And again, that's, it really depends on the vehicle and the amount of, and the engine hours on it. A lot of times we're able to extend the life of those vehicles. We've got a pretty robust just upgrade program with the public works vehicles, where they take a close look at them, see if, does it need new bed? Is there ways, obviously salt particularly does a number on the bodies of those vehicles, which sometimes will shorten the lifespan of them. But if there's a way to maintain them and, keep them on the road, we do that.
There was a question down.
Excuse me, Nicole, isn't there a tradition at least, we each identify ourselves as we speak?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sure, Dan Cable.
Dan Cable.
I'm just going to make a general comment about the CIP. Part of it over the years is they're trying to coordinate all the different departments that want to buy big things. So it isn't like we spend a lot of money this year and only a little bit next year. You're trying to get the ebb and flow so that you're not getting hammered one year and cruising by another year. That's a lot of it. And a lot on the vehicles, police cruisers and stuff. You're trying to get rid of them about the time they run out of warranty before they start nickel and diming you to death.
Well, obviously, I'm sure everyone's key and interest now is our budget going forward, so the reason I'm interested.
Was there another, did I see a hand up over? Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Fire department. This, again, is normal replacement and refurbishment of equipment, and you can see that a lot of it comes from an apparatus and equipment fund, or the ambulance revolving fund, which includes ambulance fees. Are there questions here? Okay. Gee, yeah, you got off easy. All right, totals. This is the total CIP request broken out by department. This does not include the effect of the offsets. This is the total amount that was asked for. If you add up all the numbers, it's a little over $2 million. It's a little over $2,009,000. And those are just the sums of each of the slides that you saw before. And this, actually that first bar should be a little bit above the 2 million mark. Yes.
Can you, I may be so picky, but can you confirm for me that the bar on the right represents a total cost of $1,254,516?
My number is a little bit different. I did add these up before I left the house because I knew somebody would ask. Let me just see what I got. I got $1,089,700 for that last bar.
Okay, I got my figure from, I think it's the two slides to go by adding up a column of figures, but that's the sum I got from adding up the figures, so maybe we can resolve that.
What was your number again?
It was $1,254,516. And
It was 2 million?
Pardon?
Oh, 1.089.
Yeah, 1,089,700.
So it's like a $170,000 difference essentially.
I must be right, because I'm somewhere in the middle.
I added up the these numbers on the slides.
Can I tell you where I got my numbers? If we jump 2 slides ahead.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't have that.
Ah, okay.
Oh, no wonder I'm confused.
I'm looking at a report that says Town of Peterborough CIP program. There's no, unfortunately, it says CIP summary.
Is it from this year?
Yes.
Or maybe it's the
It's
first
not a
page of
slide.
It's the
CIP
first one.
summary? Not on the slides?
Not on the slide?
Right, it's not on the slides, it's,
Oh, okay.
it's a table that came at the same time.
Yep. So some of these numbers up here do not encompass all of the numbers in the budget, such as numbers that are included from the ambulance revolving fund, other numbers that come from wastewater and utilities. So if you're looking at the totals just on that summary spreadsheet, they don't encompass those other two accounts. So if you're adding them all up on here, they won't equal the same.
Ah, okay.
And Ron, on your sheet that you're looking at, does that have the last line, does it say debt?
Yeah, let's see.
That's service.
Yes, yes. But I
Right,
added
so-
figures up before, debt service.
Okay, so you're not including the 1,714,000?
No,
You got 1,254,000, is that right?
right.
Yeah, so did I, I agreed on that one. It's different when you add up the,
And that was by adding
Table.
5 numbers that appear in the column fiscal year '23. So maybe we can clarify that at some point.
Yeah, we'll
but-
follow up. We'll
Yeah.
follow up with that tomorrow.
Yep, okay.
Yes.
So these are the total requests. Was anything denied when these department heads came to the CIP committee, or?
That's the budget committee's
Yeah,
thing.
we,
actually, the budget committee doesn't say no either. We simply make recommendations
Right.
to the,
But isn't the CIP committee recommending this to the budget committee?
yes, we
So then
are.
they would have to have approved whatever the department heads requested.
Agree to recommend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed to recommend. So nothing
Yeah.
was denied.
And I'll add, instead of denying, it might be that we recommend moving it further down the line, so a couple of years out, in order to kind of balance when the expenses are.
Right, okay, so there was some back and forth, it just wasn't here put together with this spreadsheet.
Yeah, so instead of saying, no, you're not allowed to buy that truck, they might say, well, there is a couple more years of life on it, we'll look to try and replace it maybe in 2 years instead.
Okay, so that's a key thing to add, so people don't think that just, they're asking and it's being pushed on the budget committee to then approve. Right? So there was some negotiating on when to present these for town meetings. Thank you.
if I could just add a point, speaking as having been on the CIP. And as you know, Tyler, this particular CIP doesn't have a whole lot that's different from normal.
I know.
That most of the things we're seeing, like that, one of those last slides, it was just money moving into a capital reserve and out of capital reserve. And so this year, there wasn't a whole lot for the CIP to negotiate.
Okay.
So it wasn't as conspicuous as it is sometimes.
That's key point, Tim, thank you.
Okay. And then there's one last slide. One of the things that the CIP does is it looks into the future as well. And obviously, the crystal ball gets a little bit cloudier the further out you get, but these are some of the things that have been on the plan for several years. The fire station, obviously. We are getting there, we'll know something soon. Further out, the North Peterborough Dam in '28, the Elm Street Bridge in '25, and the Grove Street Bridge in '24, with estimates of what that cost is, and those numbers will probably change. And I would be surprised if they went down. That concludes my part of the presentation. Thank you, everybody who helped me. I am very new at this. And I come from another state. So-
We will never forget that.
No, because I won't stop reminding you. And thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Valerie.
Nice job.
Good job. Good job. I told you it'd be easy.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the CIP? can move on just to presenting the draft budget. So what you have tonight, what you received last week, what folks will find online is essentially our final draft of our proposed budget. It is by no means the final budget. I thoroughly expect that after each of these meetings, we'll go back and we'll be tweaking numbers probably right up until the March 1st budget hearing. So just to kind of go over some of the changes that you're seeing to how the budget's being presented this year. Budgets are now being organized under the department director who's presenting them. That's going to prevent, as you know, in years past, we've had to do an awful lot of flipping back and forth in the book. This way, it should be just, once you get to the section that that particular director is presenting, you're just going to go right down through it. Budgets already include the salaries, COLA, and merit, and those have been moved to each employee's primary department unless they're split across funds. Take, for instance, mine, as town administrator, my salary does get split across, I think one fund still, I think it's still a little bit in ambulance, if I remember correctly.
It is currently split across many
funds.
Next year, it is only in administration.
Exactly. So right now, my salary is being drawn out of the ambulance service fund, the utilities fund, a little bit of everything really. I don't think it's in.
You're in the HR budget?
I'm in the HR budget. Finance is a little bit of mine, and the human services budget. It's all over the place, and to be quite honest, it's really a needless exercise. It's a lot easier for people to not only read the budget, but it's also a lot easier for payroll to run payroll if essentially you're housed, your entire salary is housed within your home of your department. So you're going to see over the next few years, as older budgets start to fall off, there's going to be a number in a prior year's budget, and then those will disappear, and you'll see those as we go along. So just keep that in mind as we go through all of these budgets, and all the associated retirement costs, payroll, tax costs, all of those things are also being moved out of some of the sub-departments' budgets, and then move fully into other departments. You're going to see some big jumps up in some departments and some big jumps down in other departments. It really depends.
You said that it will be happening. Do you mean that in the 23 budget, those shifts have been made, and that the 24 budget will look then exactly the same in terms of content?
Exactly.
So it's all this year.
23, right. But then if you look back, respectively at FY22, you're going to see that there's a little bit of me and this one and that one and this one.
Now, it's hard to compare previous budgets to this year's because of the reorganization, but all future budgets presumably will be on that basis of 23.
Yeah, exactly. We had to rip off the Band-Aid at some point, so we decided to do it this year.
I'd like to commend Lily for making this happen. This is not a trivial amount of work, that's for sure. But the impact is comparing previous year budget to this budget is impossible almost.
Yeah, well, you can do it. It is challenging. To look at salaries, you would have to put them all together, to try to equate the salary lines from one year to the next. But we're doing our best, and it's really, like I said, it's a Band-Aid that need to get ripped off at some point or other. So it's going to make things a lot easier, I think, for everyone going forward. Let's see, revolving funds, which are supported by user fees. These include pay-as-you-throw, the PEG station, which is our broadcast station, rec revolving fund, and the ambulance fund will be presented through this process with the entire budget, but they will not be included as part of Article 3. They will need to be voted on separately as separate warrant articles. This is something that we had not done in the past. My understanding is that the way we've done in the past has been pretty incorrect. And so while we tear the other Band-Aid off, we're going to rip this one off too. So.
Does this mean that the number of warrant articles is going to grow?
Hang on one second. The revolving funds are not going to be warrant articles. They are voted on by the selectmen.
Yep.
And that's it. The selectmen get to vote on the expenditure and the revenue budgets on revolving funds, but your pay-as-you-throw is a special revenue fund, and that is required to be a special warrant article all by itself, because if you're going to spend out of it, that has to be identified in the warrant article.
And the ambulance service will be voting to use tax funds to continue to support the ambulance service, and that will be a special warrant article.
Previously, that line item was in the fire department budget.
That's not something new.
Oh, you are still here.
I am still here. Just a quick question, the consolidated fiber build-out network is going to be subject to user fees that pay back to the town. Would that be considered a revolving fund?
Actually, that is not happening at all. The money that we appropriated at town meeting last year could be supplanted by the infrastructure, the passage of the infrastructure bill and the grant monies that are available there. We're waiting for that money to come through did not coincide with Consolidated's build-out timeline. And so they said, we're going to be more than happy to move forward. It's such a small, that amount of money is such a small piece of the amount that they were going to be investing into Peterborough. They moved ahead with the build-out without using those funds at all. So those funds will be going back into the unrestricted fund balance at the end of this fiscal year.
But we're not guaranteed to get the infrastructure money.
Exactly, so that's why they just moved ahead with the project without any funds whatsoever. So they're not requiring anything from the town of Peterborough.
Are they going to be charging user fees, do you know?
They're just going to be charging their regular fees for Consolidated. So there's no additional charges.
Okay.
Yep, and we don't have to worry about any of that weird accounting or, trying to make anything, it's all set.
It's off my list.
Yep. All right, and capital reserve funds and expendable trust funds will no longer be budgeted to expend or be included as an offsetting revenue in the budget. Again, something that we were doing incorrectly. The selectmen are the agents to expend on those funds, and they do not need to be included in the budget once they've been voted on at town meeting, because those funds have a very restricted purpose. They can only be used for whatever the money was appropriated for. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great.
Nicole, can you speak to, I'm just kind of curious, you mentioned twice performing certain procedures incorrectly. What was it that was incorrect about that?
So, what was incorrect is that once some of these funds are set up by law, once they've been adopted by town meeting, the selectmen are the agents to expend, or they're the water and sewer supervisors. So they don't have to go back to town meeting for approval every year. The selectmen can say, yep, we need to, spend the money on the salaries, spend the money on the equipment purchases, spend the money on whatever it happens to be. And they have the power to do that. The town meeting has granted them the power to do that without needing to go through the full process. So that's what we're not doing anymore. And also, so by extension, we're cleaning up essentially our finances by not including those, because it gets a little messy when it comes to our auditing process, or tax rate setting process and all that, by having all that mixed together. So we're gonna just be, kind of pulling all that apart and making it compliant.
Could you pick one example of something we've done that way in the past?
You got a favorite? Always got a favorite.
For example, during tax rate setting, all monies that in the revenues, because revenues are re-looked at and revised by participation of the town, voted on by the selectmen, and also at that same time deciding if you're going to use any fund balance to affect tax rate. But the DRA has a final say on what they are allowing and what they are disallowing. And they disallowed significant amounts of money in revenues that were listed as transfer from trust funds. So anything that was listed like that was not allowed to be used as revenue, because those revenues exist in those capital reserve funds. That agents to expend are the selectmen. The taxation has already approved to put the money into those accounts. So the town of Peterborough not only put money in the general fund budget to expend, but they also put the offsetting revenue that matched as a revenue, as a transfer from, so those revenues and those items to expend have now been pulled out. So for example, your police vehicles, $38,000 would have been put into last year's budget to buy a cruiser, and $18,100 was the warrant article amounts put into the capital reserve fund, And then additionally, the 18,100 was listed as revenue in the revenue for police. So you don't budget for the cruiser to be bought. You don't budget for the 18,100 or that $38,000 to come from the capital reserve to pay for that vehicle that you bought. You only have the special warrant article for 18,100 to put money into the account. So
The process is going to change. So in this upcoming year, rather than including it in the budget to re-vote on it again, even though it's already been voted on once before by the taxpayers when they put the money into the capital reserve fund, instead of it being included in the budget to be voted on again, it'll instead, when Chief Gennard is ready to start the process to buy another cruiser, he's going to come to the select board for permission to do so. And then once that purchase is complete, we'll submit that invoice to the trustees of the trust funds, along with a copy of the selectmen's minutes showing the authorization, and then we'll get reimbursement from the trustees.
And just to clarify that there was no double dipping or funny business going on. The same amount of money happened either way. It was just a matter of bookkeeping.
Yes, but it was also our effort to be a lot more transparent than apparently we really had to be. We essentially were bringing it through these boards twice, sometimes 3 times, if it was, or more, if it was multiple years of saving, and bringing it through town meeting multiple times, when really we were overdoing it. We were adding too many steps to the process, so this is going to really streamline things.
Okay, just want to save somebody out there who may be listening from going, oh my God, they're charging us twice for a police cruiser. So
We weren't charging twice, we were reporting it.
we were raising and appropriating it twice. And then using offsetting revenue, but then this year, with the change of the guard and the DRA.
And a change of the guard there, too.
Had a change of the guard there as well. The items were disallowed, so you raised and appropriated money to buy the police cruiser, for example, but you didn't get the offsetting revenue because it was disallowed by the DRA when setting tax rate.
Right.
So if you go to the bottom line of the budget on your very last page, it shows you that last year your raise and appropriate warrant article to support all activities was $15.8 million. We are presenting a budget of $13.8 million this year. So $2 million was in that amount that should not, so because of revolving funds, because of capital reserve funds, but they were budgeted to expend, but they also had all fully offsetting revenue. So when you come to the bottom line, that offsetting revenue meant that you weren't truly, so at the end of the game, we will have a lot less offsetting revenue for this $13.8 million budget.
But we'll also have a lot less expenses in the first place, because they're not going to be included in there. So both sides are going to go down, the expenditure and the revenue side. The amount needed to raise through taxation, is still going to be that net number.
Okay, and that $2 million that you showed in difference is not sitting in an account somewhere that we can use elsewhere, right? That's not?
No.
Thank you.
No. Every time we've
Just wanna
always...
We've looked, it's not hiding.
It's not. Under every rock, no. Every time we've come with, a revenue, we also came with an expenditure. Every time we came with an expenditure, we came with a revenue. So, but like I said, those were extra steps. We're taking those extra steps out of the process.
So we will not see that $38,000 cruiser under the police, we will not see that in the budget.
Correct.
It'll strictly go through the select board.
You got it. Yep.
So at the end of the day, that's basically an adjusting entry for that situation that.
That's what the DRA did, yes. They gave us an adjusting entry.
I want to be
Basically.
absolutely clear about this. The previous practice and the current practice, they're offsetting revenues and expenses, so it's zero effect on the budget essentially.
On the taxation.
Other than the total, yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't have it, it did have an impact, it's not going to ultimately have an impact on the taxpayers. It's, either way, we were making sure that if there's an expenditure, there was also the offset. So this way, we don't have to worry about it in the budget. It's just making sure that when it comes to the select board, everything that, we're requesting has already been approved by town meeting, has been moved over to that capital reserve fund or expendable trust fund, and then is being drawn down appropriately.
if I could just add a footnote, because you've mentioned several times with the role of the DRA in this, and
Yeah.
I've only recently learned what DRA stands for.
Department of
so-
Revenue Administration.
Yes,
Sorry.
it's a state administration, so it's a state review of our budget. So the point is, we have a state looking at this, and the state office doing that.
Yes, and we have a new DRA liaison, DRA representative working with us. She is also new this year, Lily is new this year, so there's a whole lot of new sets of eyes looking at this and saying, okay, we need to make some tweaks here. The way you've been doing it for the last 20 some odd years isn't the correct way of doing it, so let's see if we can make some adjustments. All right, so here are the items that are going to have town-wide impacts. Our health insurance rate has increased by 2.8% will be increasing by 2.8%. We received this notification last month, I believe at the beginning of December, right? From School Care, who provides our health and dental insurance. The Hampshire retirement system, there will be no increase for FY23. That's great because, as you may recall, this past year it was very significant increase from the New Hampshire retirement system. But also keep in mind that, as you know, the Northeast Consumer Price Index was 5.4% for October 21. That was the number that we pulled when we started working on this budget. That is essentially reflective of the overall inflation. When you look across the board at the various things that consumers purchase, which includes us, we're all consumers. The town itself is a consumer. And so that is, an average. Of course, in some sectors, construction, for instance, materials are incredibly high. Does some of that have to do with COVID? Absolutely, no question about that. But are we going to see that adjusting back down? I don't think any of us are willing to bet on that at this point. So we were, keeping that in mind as we were going through and making some very careful decisions about what we were asking for. Merit and COLA, which is typically reflects the Northeast Consumer Price Index and Northeast CPI every year. When we looked at that as members of the administrative staff and also the select board, where you would typically, we would have said 5.4%. We were a little bit more conservative, and we did a combined COLA and merit of 4.6%. Energy costs are expected to rise dramatically, although no one is willing to give you a number. But we're already seeing some of those increases. I'm sure everyone got their notice from Eversource recently, telling us about the rate increases that are coming. We are hearing that from everyone, all of our suppliers, to expect rate increases. So really not knowing what to go with, we gave a blanket increase of 30%. And apply that across all the budgets. Again, better to be more conservative than less, I think. And lastly, I didn't really know where to put this, honestly. I could have put it on the last slide, but I just stuck it in here. DRA has also disallowed budgeting for the tax impact of veterans credits, blind and elderly exemptions. So we're no longer going to be budgeting for those as we have done in the past. That means that we're raising and appropriating a bit more in taxes so that we're not, we see it coming essentially. We typically know year to year what those credits and exemptions are going to cost the town. Or going to, not cost the town, but shift the responsibility off of those taxpayers and onto other taxpayers. DRA has said you don't do that anymore. You need to do that at tax rate setting time, and they have a formula for that. So we're taking that estimate out of the budget, and we're just going to be including it in our tax rate setting process.
You mentioned that energy costs are expected to rise something in the order of 30%, but I'm guessing that does not apply to the solar array?
That is correct. That is a power purchase agreement, and so there is a fixed cost there. We pay 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour, and that goes to the, pretty much that's the wastewater treatment plant. And then there's, again, layers of complexity, and I can really only give you the surface of this one, because it is so complicated. We do have a net metering arrangement with the Public Utilities Commission and Eversource. What electricity is not used at the wastewater treatment plant goes out into the grid, and they pay us for some of that. And then whatever is drawn back, we pay them for that. So it's a little bit complicated. I can't really speak to it much better than that, but I certainly could give you more
I
information if you like.
wasn't looking for a lot of detail, but
Yeah.
I'm just suspecting we're getting more back from that investment than we had expected.
Significantly more. Keeping in mind, one of the biggest benefits of that solar array is not so much that fixed per kilowatt hour on the supply charge, it is the avoidance entirely of the demand side of your electricity bill. So there is no demand charges whatsoever at the wastewater treatment plant, which is the single largest consumer of electricity for the town of Peterborough. It's really a huge benefit.
We're sending our excess to them and then buying what we need for other buildings. Are we buying it at the rate we're, not the
No.
inflated rate that's coming?
We're buying, again, super complicated. What gets used under the net metering arrangement is at Eversource's default rate. What the town uses in excess of the net metering is at our supply. We have a supplier agreement with the Monadnock Buying Collaborative. That's at a much lower rate right now. So really complicated. I can't really go much further than that on it. Okay, any other questions?
It isn't just demand charges, it's distribution charges, right?
All of that we're avoiding at the treatment plant.
Right, exactly.
All of it.
Exactly. So basically, you can think of it as the electricity going directly into the building rather than being put out on the grid and brought back in.
Nicole, is there a total energy cost accumulated somewhere or mentioned somewhere?
You would have to go through each of the budgets and add up the electricity line, and you would have our total actuals if you look at prior years, or our total estimated as going forward. In terms of our usage, we do track some of that. We're not, it's a lot of work to be very diligent about it, but we try to basically work off of educated guesses, educated estimates, I think is a better way of putting it.
I couldn't get a ballpark range of what it could be. It's
As far as what the cost could be,
30% of what is?
Our electricity for the most part. We also use the same number for gas and diesel. I think we had the contract for the wood pellets though.
We do not have a contract, but we did not use 30% on anything except electricity.
Electricity, so we had
Yeah,
some.
we use current pricing
That's
for
right.
gas, diesel, and pellets.
That's right, that's right.
What I was asking, do we know that is that $1 million, or is that 10 million? We don't even
That's
have
where I
a,
was.
it's hard to put anyone one into a ballpark.
It's
Am
not 10 million. Nope.
I high, am I low?
I could,
We could add it up.
I can add it up and get you that at next week's meeting.
Quick question, are we able to participate in cooperative buying power
Yes.
consortium so that we can increase our buying power and thus lower our costs for these?
Yep, Monadnock Buying Collaborative. It's actually, it's a collaborative that was started by Rodney Bartlett, who's our former town administrator when he was still our public works director. And we participate in that along with the Jaffrey Range School District, Jaffrey, the town of Jaffrey, town of Swansea. I'm trying to think, there's so many in there now. Monadnock School District, Rochester School District. There's a whole host of schools in town that are. Conval is not part of it. Yep. But there's, it's a lot of, I think they have a different arrangement because they have so many of their own buildings. They probably do quite well. All right, great. All right, so now we're on to just my department. So administration starts on page 1, what you have right in front of you. As you can see, administration includes legal services, human services, welfare, assessing, and patriotic purposes. I can go through this incredibly quickly because there are very few changes in any of these budgets. Administration is level. What you can see there is the increases to salaries, payroll taxes, retirement, and so forth. Those reflect exactly what I spoke about earlier about consolidating salaries essentially into the home departments. And you can see immediately after that in the human services, the salaries, payroll taxes, retirement, workers' comp, cafeteria, all that has been pulled out of that department. Those will no longer exist. So human services operations, that really just covers the operations of, the basic paper, associated costs of the computer service that we use to manage welfare, is a little bit of travel to trainings and attendance at conferences, whether it's in person or virtual. Welfare itself, that's the direct relief that goes to folks who are in need here in Peterborough. We did have a significant drop in expenditures in the FY 2021 budget. A lot of that is due to the amount of aid that we were receiving from the federal government, either through expanded food stamps, expanded unemployment, expanded fuel assistance, and also expanded rental assistance was tremendous for folks in this region. So it really reduced the burden on the Peterborough taxpayer. But we're not expecting those things to last, and so we've level funded it or level budgeted it from last year to this year. Also below that you'll see public assistance. That's the aid that we give to human service agencies in Peterborough who provide a service to Peterborough residents that would otherwise have to be met by the Peterborough taxpayers. As you may or may not know, welfare is mandated by state law and requires that the town provide assistance to anyone who is in need, regardless of whether or not it's in your budget to do so. So we definitely look to the nonprofits in the area to help that out, and we support them as well.
But you're showing a reduction from last year's expenditures?
We're level budgeting it. Last year's expenditures were significantly down as far as direct relief goes. We put a little bit of, since we had saved so much money on the direct relief side, we were able to give additional grants to the public assistance side of that budget. So essentially, we didn't turn down any requests.
So you moved money in effect from direct relief into public assistance, and that's why public assistance budget is on the...
Up a little bit. And that's one of the things that we try to do at the end of the year. We take a really good, a close look at the requests that we receive from the nonprofit agencies. If there is money left in their direct relief budgets, we get close to the end of the year, and we have particularly good supportive institutions that are asking for additional funds, we may fill those requests in their entirety as opposed to in just a portion to meet the 20,000. It really just kind of depends on where we're at. Assessing, again, you see that big shift in the salary and those related costs. Those went into administration. And then, of course, you see in services, which is Corcoran Consulting, is down $15,000 because the statistical update is complete. And so our request has dropped in accordance with that. Computer services is up for the database upgrade. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry to keep asking about it. So in the line computer services,
yep,
does that $60,000 include the $50,000 that will appear on the warrant article?
It's not a warrant.
It's not going to be a warrant.
Okay.
It'll be included in the budget. So it was in the CIP because it is such a large purchase, but rather than a separate warrant article, it will be rolled into this article, into the budget.
Thank you.
I'm still a little confused when I look at the proposed budget, the delta of dollars and percent for executive administration is there's a difference in dollars of 39,000 or 15.7%. And but you're saying that on your summary there, administration is flat.
I'm not saying it's flat. What happened is we shifted the salaries out of assessing and out of human services. So we're not asking for anything in addition to what we had in a prior year. It's just exactly the new organization. Yeah,
okay, thank you.
You got it. And that's why you're seeing significant drops. Obviously, human services as a separate department is going to go away someday.
Right.
Okay.
But those salary numbers include the 4.6%.
That is correct. So when you look at administration, again, that salary, that increase is in there.
One thing I would like to have seen would have been a total for the administrative department. I had to calculate that myself, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I get a total of $590,000. I'm sorry, $590,871. And I know in our discussion of things moving around and things being consolidated, that that's not really important right to us now, but moving forward in future years, if the way we configure the budget remains the same, then that figure would be useful to seek to capture.
It could be, one of the things though that we found is that with staffing changes, particularly at the department directors level, the ability and specialties of the department directors will sometimes lend itself to moving some of the sub-departments in or out of those all-encompassing umbrellas. So while it may be useful, right now and for the next 5 years, it may not be useful, into the future. So keeping them separate, while I see your point, it can be nice to have that subtotal, it may not always be of value and it may be distracting. But if that's something that the entire committee would like to see, we could certainly include those subtotals in there.
At some point, I'd also asked about the number of employees
Yes,
in each
I'm
department.
sorry, that's right, you did ask about that.
It's not critical, it's just,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting information.
Yeah, absolutely.
People ask me all the time.
Nicole?
Yep.
Carol Nelson, most everybody knows that. Does the Human Services line include Keep Peterborough Warm Fund?
No, that is separate entirely. Those are that's entirely donations. And that is a separate fund, and includes proceeds from a specific trust that we receive on an annual basis. So it is kept entirely separate from the town's budget.
Okay.
All right.
Patriotic purposes?
Patriotic purposes, that's the last thing. So that's, again, completely flat. That is just the costs associated with buying the medallions and the flags and whatnot for veterans' graves. Also with putting on the Memorial Day Parade, Veterans Day services, getting bands, and that sort of thing. Obviously, we haven't done much in the last couple of years because of COVID, for obvious reasons, but it is the hope that we're going to be able to start doing those again. And with that, turn it over to Lily.
So if you fast forward to page 10. You guys all there? So the general government section of the budget is made up of mostly insurance products and unemployment and the I said .00.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why that showed up like that. It's
Okay.
funny.
You talk about the unemployment.
With my eyesight right now,
At first I thought it was
with the lighting, I thought,
3.9 million.
unemployment, 3 million, no, that's $3,954. I will fix it.
That's odd.
That's odd to see it for the first time. So as Nicole has already mentioned, health insurance rates have gone up 2.8%, but the cost of health insurance, which is the biggest driving factor in this $1.2 million budget, is the $950,000 for health insurance, and which is a little over a 5% increase, but that is based off of current staffing levels and their current health insurance plans. Compared to who was on staff and expected to be on staff when the budget was set last year. So
you may, essentially, you may be seeing more family plans on there than we thought we were going to have.
Or staffing changes in general. So so that makes a big difference there. Workers' compensation is the big change there. I have pulled workers' compensation out of all of the individual budgets and put it where it goes, which is general government. I am trying to get things back into where they go for reporting to the DRA, for the cost of these different items. So workers' compensation will only exist in revolving funds or enterprise funds where they are supported by user fees for those areas. Otherwise, if workers' compensation was in the highway, it is now here in general government.
So that number represents the whole town?
Exactly, yes.
Thank you.
These same items appear to me to have been called human services back in the administration budget. Is there a difference?
Human resources, is that where your eye is
No,
pointing
no.
down to?
It's called human resources here, and it seemed like the same thing
So
for human
human
services.
resources is actually the HR department. So payroll and insurance counseling and bringing benefits.
Administration,
Any problems that we have in an employee, it has to go through an HR process or a panel. So previously, the reason that has been zeroed out on the salary level is that was one of the areas that Nicole's salary was being supported because she is ultimately the Human Resources Director on top of being the town administrator. We do have a deputy in that position that works in my department who also is the person in charge of running our payroll. That is Jennifer Bowman Hall. But her salary is all in the salary line, along with myself and the AP clerk in the finance operations on the following page.
And and that's another example of when I think it was last year or the year before, we had that under administration. HR was in administration, and we have, since Jen has taken over the day-to-day responsibilities, it made sense to move that into the finance department, under the finance department umbrella.
Right.
Why would it not be in your department of administration?
I'm not doing the day-to-day work that typically, the human services. Jen's doing all the day-to-day stuff. So she's running the payroll, she's, doing the benefits administration. That is probably 90% of the work that's being done by HR. So new hires, for instance, she's processing all the new hires. I used to do all of that as deputy town administrator. So Jen's now doing all that. The work that I'm doing now is as HR director. I have the final say over hiring, discipline, and termination. And so that is, in my purview. And also policy, whether setting, some internal policy within the guidelines that the selectmen have already granted to me as powers and duties, or, working with the selectmen and town attorney to establish new policy. Yep.
Okay, so in the section under general government, there's a subsection general government operations that is primarily just for the property and liability insurance, as well as the services line. That $4,500 is the fees associated with the investments made by the trustees of the trust. So that's what that $4,500 is. Property liability insurance has increased their rates, but I've also moved a couple of those areas out of highway and buildings and grounds and into general government operations. The human resources, as Nicole just discussed, the salary information has been removed for all of those different reasons, so that will not be a funded budget going forward. Whereas the operations, there is a small amount of money, $5,000 for advertising new jobs, and the $2,500, the medical services is primarily for drug testing and background checks through Corey checks at the state police office and the DMV if a person's driving record is needed to be done.
Would it make any sense just to get rid of that $5,000 and put everything under finance and HR going forward? Just to eliminate
They are
the
actually
one?
separately budgeted for by the DRA, and
so
I
same
have
thing.
to take all of this information and translate it into the DRA accounting style of budgeting. So some of these things need to stay where they're at in order
Has to
to
stay
be
in
compliant
HR.
with their style of accounting. So on page 11, the finance operations, the just to give you a sense, there are now 3 full-time employees being fully budgeted here, whereas there was truly only 20% of me and half of Jen. So the big jump there is not because of larger salaries being paid in those positions. So, but it does include all 3 of us full-time with the merit and COLA increases. So that accounts for $56,000 of the $75,000 increase. The other increases are $3,000 for the audit. The audit is under contract. We are entering our final year of this audit contract. And to answer an anticipated question, yes, those go out to bid. So the so there's nothing else other than those big jumps. The computer services, that difference there is how much it's going to cost for the annual maintenance for our accounting software. You guys have any questions there? Yes.
The last item there, fraud loss,
Yes.
Yep.
only 46,909, you're not expecting any?
Well, in next year's budget, Tyler? Absolutely not. Not on my watch.
Good question. That's what I wanted to hear.
Absolutely not. So that 46,909 was an actual expenditure in FY21. And so that's why that column is there, that row, sorry. So tax collection, we don't have new employees there. We thankfully have long-time employees. Our tax collector has over 17 years with the town of Peterborough, and her deputy has over 10. The reason for the increase there is because 25% of their salary was being budgeted for in the ambulance revolving fund, and that didn't make any sense at all. So part of their salary is paid out of tax collection, and the other part is in the water billing collections and in the sewer enterprise fund in their billing collections as well. So this represents 60% of their salary, and then 20% to water and 20% to sewer. They send out water sewer bills 4 times a year, and taxes are done twice a year. They are also responsible for posting and tracking all revenues townwide. Okay, so that's where that large jump is there. So as previously mentioned in the original presentation, veterans tax credit has been removed. So that is a reduction of $216,750 to next year's budget compared to our current year's budget. And then last but not least, debt service. So this is not reflective of all of our debt. This is only reflective of town-wide debt or debt that we have taken on that is reimbursed fully to us. For example, the connector road for the hospital is budgeted here. The West Peterborough TIF is budgeted here. The betterment bond for Rob Farm Road is budgeted here, as well as the GAR Hall parking lot, which is paid for by the downtown TIF. So those 4 are budgeted in debt service and then are fully reimbursed through our revenues by those different. So I send a bill to the hospital for theirs. We collect the betterment through taxes for Rob Farm, and then we turn around and bill the TIFs as the bond payments are called upon. Bond payments are done twice a year standardly. So the other debt service that is here is for a pool bond, town hall renovation, Main Street Bridge, library, and Union Street infrastructure. We have 4 other bonds. 3 are in the water enterprise fund, and the other in the sewer enterprise fund. The final caveat here on debt service is the lease purchase payments. The reason that that was zeroed out is that is for an ambulance, and I have moved it to the ambulance revolving fund. So finance overall is down 10.5%. Yes, sir.
Again, I'm going to ask the question I already know the answer to. Do you know what the total is of the appropriations for everything in the finance sphere outside of debt service and general government tax collection?
So you want me to?
Well, I would just like to have that figure available, but I got $1,698,013.
That sounds too high.
We just have
The
to
general
subtract out.
government is $1.2 million and debt service is $1.1 million, and it's $2.8 million total.
Well, at any rate, if I made an error,
finance-
it would be helpful just to be able to see that.
So you're just looking for the human resources, finance, and tax collection?
Yes.
I'm just eyeballing it right now, 357. $440,000.
I'm talking about
You said
general
you,
government.
you said you didn't want general government or debt
Oh,
service?
no.
General government is the insurance products for the entire
No,
town.
right.
Not the 5 employees in the
Right.
finance department.
But I'm just saying, everything except the last two delineate, except for debt service and general government tax collection.
Can you just subtract out the final number and then
Yeah,
show
so
the 2.83?
1.7?
Yeah, roughly.
Yep, 1.7.
Yeah, a little under.
But 1.1 of that, almost 1.2 of that is insurance for the entire town.
Yeah, right. But if we compare that to the private year, not that it has any meaning at all, it's up a little bit, but, so it's what it is.
It's not up a little bit. Debt is down 259,000
No,
and the
I'm
overall is
saying
down 333.
excluding debt.
Yes.
It's the reduction in debt service that really shines, that really
The
causes.
259,000,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's really great. That's to be applauded. But, never mind. I still like to see that.
I will take her back.
I agree, it is to be applauded. Maybe you could say a little bit more about why that is, because it could be just because we paid off the debt, but I don't think that is.
We
what
did
it
not
is.
pay off any debt. There was debt that was.
But debt service went down.
There was debt that was budgeted for that was not debt. Yeah.
But debt service went down because,
Of the refinancing.
Because it was over budgeted last year.
Okay.
but it was also refinanced, wasn't it? Or some of it?
That water, wastewater.
And those are not raised by taxation, those are user fees only.
Yeah, so you'll see those in the water enterprise fund and the sewer enterprise fund. The one thing that did come out of debt service is that $81,000 you see there for the ambulance. It's been moved to the ambulance revolving fund. So it's not paid off. It has 1 year. Next year is the last payment on that ambulance.
I know you touched on this earlier, the veterans tax credit disappears here. Does it show up somewhere else?
No. So what'll happen is at tax rate setting, that money will be raised through taxes and the tax burden will be shifted out to all the other taxpayers.
The veterans still get their credit. but
Absolutely.
it'll be
Yes,
paid by the
yes.
general taxpayer.
Yeah, elderly still get their exemptions, none of that will change.
Is the elderly a similar number to this 216?
That's the entire number. That's the combined elderly and veterans credits and everything.
This number here, the
For that,
216
for
is
this,
everything?
yeah, this current fiscal year, yes.
And the tax overlay, we know that we will, based on an agreement that we already have under contract, the $11,298 for that product. But the other overlays, we don't know what will come in abatements and be approved by selectmen to refund taxpayers. That's what the overlay is.
Very nice job.
Yes.
We also have revenues associated with finance. And
You kind of have them associated with admin too, but they don't really count, do they?
Well, we have, on the revenues page, the first section is federal and state revenues that come in.
What page number is that one?
The very first of your revenues. So it's a separate document, so the last page of the expenditure budget is 44, so.
I can just read them off, there's not very many.
Yeah, there's not very many. So the federal and state revenues, there's a flood reimbursement grant for $36,000, forest reserve lands by $363. Meals and rooms tax is budgeted now at $494,420, which is what we received last week. And the highway block grant is $189,045. These will all be reassessed and informed to us during tax rate setting next year. So we can only imagine that we'll get at least what we got this year from these different federal and state pockets of revenue. As you can see, that water pollution grant, this year they plugged into our general revenues incorrectly. That new DRA rep put it into the, that is actually the sewer grant that we just, at the selectmen's meeting, discussed the refinancing and how that was important to not lose those monies this year. So the finance revenues are associated to bank interest, which we are getting about $1,000 a month on our deposit account. So I have that budgeted at $12,000 for revenue. And then the three other revenues are actually transfers from the user account. So the water enterprise fund, the sewer enterprise fund, and the ambulance revolving fund, those are the exact cost, and they will be budgeted for in those separate expenditure budgets of ambulance, water, and sewer. That is the cost of the health insurance and dental insurance for the employees in those departments. So because the general government cost of insurance is in the finance department budget, that's why it is existing there. So the amounts of money is totaling $189,000 between those four types of revenue. The tax collector has revenues listed as well. We have several properties in town that are under pilot agreements, and we are, instead of charging them taxes, they have payments in lieu of taxes totaling $65,784. And we anticipate approximately $95,000 will be paid in interest for late paid taxes. So if you pay after the tax bill is due, there's interest. If your property comes under lien, the interest is different, but it is still collected as interest owed on taxes. And then there's a record request fee that Beth does quite a bit of work for mortgage companies, and she charges them a total of $1,500 for her efforts, so that when she gets payments for 260 properties held by Northway Bank, she's already provided the correct information on all of those different properties and the owners of record on our end, so that the mortgage company takes the exact amount of money owed out of those individual escrow accounts and sends us one check for those properties. And if you're curious at all, the very last page of the revenues, I've added something so that people had started to think about the different uses of fund balance and what you've used fund balance for in the past. Fund balance can be used in any of your warrant articles to support any of those types of transactions, and that would be listed right in the warrant article that fund balance would be used, not taxation. And then fund balance can be used by the selectmen to lower the tax rate, and then for emergency expenditures. So just to give you a sense of the use of your fund balance, how it's happened over the years, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Does the fund balance for emergency expenditures exist?
Yes.
Is that there now?
Yes.
Yes. That's why it's listed as $1,753,479.
And that's the maximum amount that the town can use. We're approved to overextend this year's budget by that amount, not to exceed that amount. We're really hoping that we go a bit less than that when we get to the end of the year. So with any kind of luck, maybe Mother Nature will be nice to us. We'll have a nice gentle winter. We can use that winter maintenance money to hopefully reduce that draw.
Did I miss what happened to the timber yield tax and the land use changes in taxes?
I apologize. Did I gloss over that too quickly?
So they're zeroed out.
I've asked Ally in assessing, and she's looking at to see if there's any applications on file that might affect those figures. So right now, I've not plugged in so you're right, I need to get that answer.
So it's not going away, we just need to fill it in?
No, it's not going away at all. It's dependent on knowledge of whether there's any applications in right now in order to do a timber harvest and that sort of thing. And it's so far off, so it's harder to judge those revenues. And it's always good to underestimate your revenues, and then when tax rate is set, you can bump that up, reflect it as what's really happening at that moment in time, because tax rate setting is 10 months from now, and we'll have a much better picture of what we'd be getting for those types of taxes, whether it's land use or timber harvest or gravel.
Land use change happens when someone takes land out of current use and then subdivides it or develops it. So that's a particularly hard target to hit because you really have no idea if anyone's going to, do that sort of work.
And it can't be done ahead of time.
Right.
You have to wait for the land to no longer qualify in order to issue that.
Yeah.
So it can't be done preemptively.
Is there any sense that timber use taxes will increase this year to a greater degree than they have in the past, judging by the number of trucks that drive by my house? I count.
It's always, so there's an estimate that's submitted to the selectmen in advance of a timber cut, theoretically, in advance. And then you don't actually get the amount until after the harvest has been completed.
The number's been very consistent over the years.
Not at all. So you'll have some years where we'll go.
Over the last 3 years, the numbers look fairly flat, I'm saying, right?
Pretty flat, and then, every once in a while, you'll have someone who's getting ready to sell a large piece of property. We'll do a big harvest, so they can maximize, whatever it is, whatever that yield is, before they sell it, or convert it, or do what have you. Any other questions? I can't really see it behind me, so.
Thank you.
There are no raised hands behind you. So, hearing nothing else, is it appropriate for me to entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I guess it is. All in favor from the Budget Committee?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.